Hello everyone and welcome to my coloring corner. Today is Art Therapy Thursday, and yesterday during our Wellness Wednesday we started this wonderful picture with the Fila colored pencils, and I will be continuing this picture today and I will finish it off. What I'm going to do, because there is still a lot left and I don't want to be here for hours and hours and hours boring you to death with the same colors. I will tell you the colors that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to do the area and I'm going to speed it up, and then I'll move on to the next area so that you know what colors I've used, but you don't have to sit there and watch me slowly get it done. So we're going to continue the skin for her shoulders and her hands. We're going to, of course, use 149, 80, and they will be in this order. 80, 80, 42, sorry, and 58, and then 124. So those are the colors that we will be using for her skin. And I will, like I said, I will go through and speed color through this, and then I will come back and I'll tell you the colors I'm going to use for the poppies. I'll speed color through that, and then we'll do the frame. I'll tell you the colors I'm going to use for that, and we'll speed through that. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to use the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s for the background. The reason why I'm going to use the Neocolor 2s for the background is a really good friend of mine did a background with the Neocolor 2s, and she didn't like the way that it turned out. And it did turn out a little bit splotchy, and I gave her a few suggestions on how to correct that. And she did beautifully on correcting it. Don't get, but I wanted to remind you that sometimes when you do a background, especially with a watercolor medium, sometimes it can be a little bit splotchy. And I'm going to show you the different things that I suggested to her to help create that illusion that it's not as splotchy as you think it is. All right, so I am going to start on the skin. Of course, I will speed that up, and I will be back. I will add some music to it, and I'll be back when I move on to the flowers. Again, like I said, I will speed that up and add some music to it, and then when I transition from one area to the next, I will come back and tell you the colors that I'm using. All right, guys, so now time for some coloring. And of course, as you all know, we start with number 149, which is a purple tone for our shadows. So we're going to start here. And like I said, the next time you hear me talk, it will be to tell you the next colors. Until then, enjoy the music, enjoy the speed coloring, and I will see you all very soon. Okay, so the skin is done, and now we're going to move on to the poppies. And the poppy colors that we're going to use is number 16, number 41, number 82, and number 69. So in order of how we're going to use them, it's going to be number 16 for the red areas, the dark areas, number 82 coming off of, number 69 coming off of that, number 82, and number 41 for the lighter areas. Of course, I am going to speed this up, so I will be back momentarily after I am done coloring the poppies, and then we will move on to the green areas and the buds as well as the seed pods. And I will show you the colors for those. All right, I will be speeding this up and adding some music to it. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll be back after a few minutes of coloring poppies. All right, guys. Okay, so now we've got all of her done, all of the poppies done. Now we're going to move on to, of course, the areas that are plant life. So the leaves, well, there's not really any leaves, but the buds, the vines, as well as the seed pods. So we're going to move on to that, and we've got some greens here for the um, buds and the vines. So we've got number 7, number 79, and number 57. Number 79 is going to be our dark. We're going to transition into number 57, and number 7 is going to be our light tone. Then for our seed pods, we're going to be using a little bit of black, a little bit of green, and we're going to be adding a little bit of 77 as well as 16 into there as well. So those are the colors that we're going to work with here. And of course, like I said, I'm going to speed it up so that we can get through it quickly, and then we will move on to the background. So I'm going to switch you, actually I'm going to leave you on the distance camera here, just because it's a little bit easier to show you the entire picture as I go. Of course, we're going to start with a little bit of red in the bulbs, as well as number 79. And then we will transition into number 57 and then into number 7. And that is the way the vines and the seed pod is going to go. All right, so I am going to speed this up. I'm going to color the border fairly quickly here. And then we are going to grab some Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2s and work on that background. All right, guys, here comes the speed up. Okay, so now that we have completed the coloring of this project, I'm going to do the background, and I'm going to do the background with the Neocolor 2 Aquarelle crayons. I've got my palette here. I did take a quick moment and tape down the page onto the board. If you are doing this in the book, you don't need to tape it down. I took it out of the book because I don't want to get the other pages wet. If you are doing this in a book, make sure that you put something behind your page in order not to soak through to the other page, because the water will soak through these thin pages. I have my heat gun. This is a necessity. If you do not have one of these, get one. It does wonderful things with watercolor, especially on this coloring book paper. When you put down your watercolor, you want to dry it as quickly as possible so that when you put on the next color, it doesn't wash it out, and when you're moving stuff around, it basically what it does is it quickly dries it so that your page doesn't completely warp. You're still going to get a little bit of warping, but if you dry it quick enough, you're not going to get as bad of a warping. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put down the blue cobalt, and I'm going to put this on my palette first. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can do this directly on the page, or you can do it on a palette. I'm going to do a little bit of both so that you can see the difference between them. So in the darker areas down here, I'm just going to go directly on the page. And we're going to move that around with a water brush. All right, I think in here and in here, and then over here as well. Now, doing it directly on the page like this does put the pigment right where you want it to be. I find myself that doing it this way, oh, I forgot to get some paper towel. That was silly. Another one of those necessities, make sure that you have some paper towel. Not only so that you can dab your water brush, make sure that it doesn't have too much water on it, but also if you get too much water on your page, you can dab that up a little bit. So I've got my water brush here, and we're just going to wet this down, and we're just going to spread it. Now, one of the things that I find with doing it this way is you get hard lines from the crayon. One of the reasons why I don't like doing it this way, because I don't like the hard lines. So I'm going to actually grab my paintbrush, which has a little bit more so as you can see, we've got a fairly hard line there in it. I don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our best to knock that out. And spread it around. And then we're going to take straight off the palette and we're going to fix that. Now you can do that by adding more water or by adding more paint, more of the watercolor. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of both. We're going to add water to what is there, and then we're going to gradually blend that together with paint off of the palette. So I'm not going to dry this yet because I want to blend that. So I'm going to take some of the Neo and I'm going to scribble it on the palette like that. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to pick it up. Wet it down and pick it up with the brush. And then we're going to spread it like So pick a little more of it up. Then we're going to dry this a little bit. And it's fairly dry. And then we're going to just put down a little tiny bit more for a deeper color in this area here, just so that we can blend that in to where we drew the crayon. So one of the things that I would strongly suggest if you're going to use a watercolor crayon or that sort of thing is, unless it is blendable dry, put it on a palette first. I always prefer to put it on the palette first because it gives me more control. And it removes that hard line. It softens the crayon quite a bit, so you can work into those harder lines. And that's how you repair that splotchiness that you get by putting it directly on the page. Like this area here is directly on the page. But what we're going to do is we're going to drag it out. And then we're going to pick up a little bit more of the paint. And we're just going to continue it. Like so. This area here as well. Fill it in and drag out from that stronger area there. Like that. And then we're going to do the same thing here. So as you can see, you can definitely put it on the page as long as you have something that you can extend it with. The Neocolor 2s are one of the ones that I have found that does not extend well directly off the page. It works very nicely on the palette, but when you color directly on the page, it doesn't tend to give you much room in moving. The King Art gel sticks and the softer crayons like that do tend to give you a little bit more wiggle room with going straight on the page and then drawing it out. I'm going to quickly dry this. And I'm not drying it completely dry. I'm just drying it enough that when I put the next layer of color on, I don't move a whole lot of that other color. And so that I don't end up with a saturated page. Now you will find that if you go in opposite directions, of course, you're going to get brush lines. And brush lines, not a big deal in this instance. We kind of want them in there because I'm going to show you how you can repair that look, how you can repair that blotchy look on the page. Because sometimes we just end up with blotchy looks, and that's normal, especially when you're working with a wet medium. All right, I'm going to pick up some more of that color. Now I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm just going to add more water. So as we move it up, we're going to lighten it. Like so. I'm going to get into the curves of her face here without going into her face. That'd be good. We don't want her to have a blue face. All right, and we're going to again go into that deeper blue color here. Sometimes you have to be a little bit patient with it as well. And sometimes you have to work a little slower. Okay, I'm going to use the paintbrush now, just so I can get the paint on the page. Like I said, I'm not going to worry about it being blotchy because that's what we're going to repair. So I'm just trying to get the blue on the page so that we can dry it and work it out. Add some more crayon. This is going to take a bit of crayon to get this whole area done. I add more water. Mix it together with the brush. And pick up all the other areas too. Now, one of the reasons why it does go blotchy like it does is because coloring book paper is not made for watercolor, so that water doesn't sit on it. It just absorbs into the paper like a little sponge. So unless you put down a whole lot of water, which causes issues with the paper, you end up with start and stop lines, which can cause the blotchiness. Now I'm going to dry this because I don't want wrinkles. And I'm drying it completely so that I can dry those wrinkles out, because I do have quite a few wrinkles in there, and that will cause even more blotchiness. That will cause even more problems with the movement of the water. So if you've got lines or wrinkles in your paper, the water is going to follow those wrinkles and pool, which will cause a little bit more blotchiness. So I do have some wrinkling. Oh, my tape lifted up here, so let's put that back down. All right, put my pins down. So I'm going to put my tape back down. All right, so we do have a little bit of wrinkling going on, which is perfectly normal. It's going to happen. The only thing that you can really do about that is, like I said, dry it quickly while you're working. So do an area, dry it quickly, and move on to a new area. This paper is extremely absorbent, and not in a good way. Now, one of the things about working on the surface I'm working on is it's a glass surface. So the water soaks through into the glass, and then I end up with watermarks behind it as well, which is fine. I will fix that afterwards. Another thing that I do when I use watercolor to repair that wrinkling of the page is A, I dry it while I'm using it, and B, I also use a small iron afterwards to repair and flatten the page. So I'm just very quickly getting as much of this paint on here as I can before I have to dry it again. All right, let's dry it again. Okay, now we're going to do the other side. We're going to put down some more of the blue. I'm spreading it out so that I can thin it out a little bit. Now we're going to start from the bottom because this is pretty deep blue, and we want it to be a thin blue by the time we get up to the other blue there. And since this area here still has that colored on the page stuff, it will make it easier to thin out. And again, we're intentionally making this blotchy so that we can fix it. I'm trying to make it intentionally blotchy. Sometimes it's really difficult to do, especially when you've corrected the problem before and you've learned how to keep that from happening. Sometimes it's hard to make it happen. If that makes any sense at all. Okay, now we're going to try this again. Try to get a little closer to her head. There we go. And I think this is probably one of the biggest problems that people have, is they forget to quickly dry their work. Drying it quickly does give you the ability to smooth it out a little bit while it's first laid down, instead of waiting and letting it soak into the page. You're drying it before it soaks in, which does make a bit of a difference. Okay, so we do have a little bit of blotchiness, not as much as I want, but we do have a little bit. So let's fix this blotchy area here first. Well, let's just make it a little more blotchy. All right, so I'm going to rinse off my brush. We're going to put the blue away. And we're going to grab grass green. And we're going to put it on the palette. And we're going to grab a yellow green as well. And that's going to be our light and our dark green colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the dark green. We're going to pick that up. And we're going to put quite a bit of water down. And we're just going to try not to get it on her. And we're just putting in some extra little bits of green behind her here, because we're going to add a little bit of illusion that she's in the garden of poppies. So that we can hide a little bit of that blotch. All right, now we're going to rinse the green off. We're going to dry it. All right, now we're going to take red orange, so let's take vermilion and we're going to put it down, and we're going to do this very, very lightly. So we're going to put down the vermilion, and then we're going to take salmon, and we're going to mix the salmon into it because we want it to be a very light color. We don't want it to be extremely bright or anything like that, because it's going to be in the background. And we're just going to dab it. Like so. Now we're going to come back in here and we're going to wake up this blue here and fill in the areas with it. Because I had a couple of areas that looked still a little too splotchy. Like so. Now I'm going to take that salmon again. And we're just going to put it a little bit on top of these areas. And I know it looks a little strange. And I want a little tiny bit more of that vermilion. But once I dry it, it will give the look that we're looking for. Okay, now as you can see, I have a couple of different areas like here and here, here, that is not quite blended in. So it's not as soft as we want it to be. So I'm going to take a clean brush. This is just water, just a clean brush of water, and we're going to wake it up a little bit and move it around. And we're just spreading it out a little bit, getting it to look softer, to look more faded in the background, if that makes sense. Not really picking it up, just moving it around. And like I said, we're doing this with a clean brush. It's got no color on it at all. It's just got water on it. And as you can see, I'm picking up some of that color as we move it around. So it's softening out that color, lifting up some of it where it's too dark and softening it and blending it into some of those lighter areas. Like this one here is too dark in that area, so we're going to blend it out. This is too dark in this area, so we're going to blend it out. So any of these areas that look too hard, so like a straight line, or it doesn't look like it's just blended in very well, you just take some paper, some water, and you just blend it in. Soften it up a little bit and blend it together. Use a clean brush for this so that you're not transferring or picking up more paint or putting down more paint, because we're just trying to move the paint that we already have on the page. Now we're going to dry it out again. Okay, and there we have our poppy field behind her. So if you do find that, say you're doing a blue sky and it comes out really blotchy, and you have things around it that you can work into it in a faded fashion, you can definitely do that. If you are just wanting it straight blue, make sure that you have a heat gun. Gently go over with a water brush and the color that you're working with and just drag that color through, dragging it up until it is fairly even. Or another thing you can do is just take a wet brush and gently go over it until you have it spread evenly the way you want it to. If you find that it's too light, you can definitely add more color, but put it on a palette first. Don't put it directly on your page. I'm going to quickly peel this up. Let's start over here. And I'm going to dry the back of it because, like I said, it is on coloring book paper and I have it on a glass mat. So the watercolor is going to go through and sit on the glass, which is not going to let it dry as thoroughly as if I had it in the book. But in the book, and this is why I say not to put it in the book, because you're going to end up with water permeating or going through your areas just like you would if you had marker. Okay, so that's fairly dry. So what I'm going to do is I am going to peel this off. Gotta peel it off the page. Hold on a sec. There's a trick to this. I told somebody how to do this once. So what we do is we lift it up and we put the heat under it, which softens the glue so you don't rip the page. Like so. Just be careful that you don't, you know, set your page on fire or burn your fingers, because both are possible. It is a heat gun, it is a heat source, and it is paper. So I will go over this with a iron and iron it out so that we get rid of all of the foldy bits, but there we have it. That is the Poppy Fairy by Christine Caron. I will be posting this video a little bit later after I do a little bit of editing and speeding things up for you so that you're not watching a 3-hour long video. All right, guys, until next time, thank you all very much for coming and hanging out and watching this video. Of course, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you to any YouTube artist that you enjoy. Always remember to ring the bell. Not only does this make sure that you know when we're going live and when we have videos posted, but it tells YouTube that you want to see our stuff. And of course, always remember to relax, color, and stay safe, everyone. Until next time, bye-bye for now.